Welcome one and welcome all. We are live on BerryFlow Upstream, number 68. We're calling this one SmartSlide because we'll be talking a little bit about the BlackBerry Priv. Got an awesome little cast on tonight with us. We have Editor-in-Chief at Crackberry, Mr. Blaze. How you doing, man?
Doing good, doing good. Can't complain. Alex told me I wasn't allowed to complain, so you know.
Well,
That
you just
defeats the
you just
purpose
gave
of
that
it.
you just gave that one all the way. As well with us tonight, we have Brandon Orr. How you doing, man?
Pretty good. Can't complain. Yeah, I just came back from a good dinner.
Word. And as well with us, we have Alex Bass of Cyberbytes Inc. trying to rebrand himself online because he's having a little bit of like a midlife crisis or a quarter life crisis, excuse me. But how you doing, Alex?
Good, good. Yesterday I had dinosaur barbecue for the first time ever, so I have some ribs left over. I'm gonna jump and eat those right after this, so hopefully it's a quick stream. But
When is it ever?
Alex, you got a lot of stuff going on in your life, eh?
yeah, absolutely, man.
You got ribs, you got a rebranding, you know?
It's a big day for me.
It's funny because like we're gonna see Brian get up and head for those ribs like in the middle of the cast. He's gonna come back. And he's back there. We have a
Next
couple.
week, Brian's got like barbecue marks all over.
That would look just wrong on air. It really would. If anyone's wondering what I'm drinking tonight, it is Yingling, America's Lager, one of the oldest brewing companies in the United States. We have no affiliation whatsoever, but we have an affiliation through alcohol, so
We would like to have an affiliation.
oh, that'd be great. They want to send me a six-pack before these. I'll definitely partake in some of those. But we have a lot to talk about, right? I was kind of surprised how much there would be to talk about following the earnings last week, where John Chen, BlackBerry CEO, let out a lot of information in terms of the Priv and really what we have looking forward for the next couple of months in terms of the roadmap. I put out an article, 5 Reasons Priv is a Good Name, and I know we've discussed on here that we personally dislike the name. You know, they could have really done anything but Priv. But we also kind of discussed where the name is actually good for BlackBerry because it ties into a lot of the different search terminologies and things like that behind privacy and obviously privilege as well. So what do you guys think? Is the name really growing on you the more we know what it is? Or are you still kind of on the fence on whether it's going to be successful for BlackBerry in terms of marketing?
I've been talking a little bit to my family now because they're curious about, a lot of them have Q10s and they're curious when the next phone's going to come out. They're actually complaining about the size of the screen. It's kind of getting to them. They want something larger. And it's just like I was sitting at the dinner table with like 4 of them and I had to say, they're like, what's the new phone that's coming out? They hadn't heard it all. And I was like, it's called the BlackBerry Priv, but it's just ignore that. And it's just felt kind of wrong to say the BlackBerry Priv. And of course they started making fun of it. It's like, it's tough, just people who they love BlackBerry and they hadn't heard of the name whatsoever. They don't really pay too much attention to the news or the media, and they found it was like a little bit of a goofy name. But really, again, it's a name, whatever. Call it it's a BlackBerry. I don't know.
I still hate it and whatever, but it is what it is. You can't go back and change it. I mean, well, that's probably not true either because John Chen changed the Q20 to the friggin' classic. But in any case, it's a name. It's out there. It is what it is. So like Alex, I've kind of had a hard time explaining it to people because honestly, like a lot of people have actually been asking about the device because of the fact that it landed on the news and stuff like that, and there has been a lot of positive and negative attention directed towards it. Yeah, like Alex, I have a hard time actually referring to it as the Priv. It's like, well, it's the new BlackBerry.
Yeah.
It's funny
It
because
runs Android. That's usually what I leave it at, and
Yep.
most people are like, "Oh, okay."
Android satiates them enough to not ask any more questions about why it's named Priv.
Yeah, and honestly, like I kind of like I leave the Priv name out of it, and most people are fine with it. It's a slider and it runs Android, so
Whatever works, right? It's funny because
yeah.
this episode is entitled SmartSlide, and almost SmartSlide by itself, the BlackBerry SmartSlide, that even sounds better than Priv, personally. So
Yeah.
it's funny, and we talked about names not really meaning much, right? So in terms of the marketing and branding, there's a lot more that they can tack on to Priv to really define it. Things like SmartSlide, right? These little core features that they can market as opposed to just the name. So again, there's a lot of potential for them for this name to be successful in ways maybe Passport or Classic or not. Brandon, what are
It's
some of your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's funny because in Toronto, I used to live in an area that was predominantly Russian, and in Russian to say hello, you say "Привет." And so when I first heard of Priv, I automatically heard of that. I thought of that word "Привет," which is Russian for hello, and I was thinking about how whenever I look at my app downloads on a monthly basis, there seems to be a number of people, quite a few people, consistently, proportionally for my downloads, coming from Russia. So I mean, although it's inadvertently, I mean it could be a cool short form for saying hey, hello to Android. You know,
It's the reintroduction of BlackBerry. They're saying
yeah,
hello with a new device.
exactly.
Keep moving. I'm sorry. That was cold. That was cold. Cool as a cucumber for sure on that one. But I really hope the name is something that works well for them and they can kind of progress forward because, a name is such a small part of what the overall offering from that device is going to be. Shortly thereafter, the earnings call, we actually got some official images on Inside BlackBerry of the BlackBerry Priv, and Blaze definitely took a deep dive on some of those photos, and we will go into that in a little bit. But just the overall official render, it lit up my day. It really did. I was so excited to get that kind of eye candy. When you saw the official renders for yourselves, guys, were you enticed by what you saw?
I was excited to actually see them, but at the same time I was like, I want to see more. Why isn't there more? Like why isn't there just more pictures? And it's interesting because of the fact like on the last upstream I was complaining like BlackBerry made this announcement but they never released any actual pictures. So when I woke up and I saw that they posted them, I'm like, finally.
Someone's watching, Chris.
Right?
Someone's watching. So Alex is showing it to us right now. We got some side shots of the device, looking very clean, relatively slim. I mean, we're looking at kind of like the Passport thickness with obviously the screen as an additive there, but the screen is relatively slim as well. Again, these kind of renders are just what makes it so drool worthy, right? When you can look at it in high detail and see as well that you have that nice kind of glass weave back.
The only thing that kind of bothers me is the camera sticking out the back, bulging in the back. Me personally, it's just my own little pet peeve. I hate when the camera sticks out the back because when you stick it on a table, it doesn't lie flat, and so it rocks back and forth a bit. So we'll see if that's an issue. It doesn't look like it from some of these other renders we see, but definitely when you see it from the side, it does look like the camera does bulge out the back. So we'll see. Depends. Maybe if it's centered, it kind of just rests on the lens there and has it flat.
Yeah, I think it's going to lay pretty flat. But also, with that being said, I'm also willing to give up the, I don't know, the cleanliness of the lines and have that actual camera hump there as long as the camera actually is good. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I,
absolutely.
for a BlackBerry device to have an excellent camera, I would be totally forgiving of that little hump on the back
Yeah.
for once. Like, maybe the new Nexus might not win that same love from me, but to have it on a BlackBerry, it'd be like, yeah, okay, the hump is there, but you finally gave us a good goddamn camera, so great.
Definitely. I'm looking for quality, and if you needed a little bit more space to get that module in, by all means, do what you got to do. And really, what phones these days don't have that kind of camera bulge? I know it's
And,
rather
well,
large, but a lot of phones have it these days.
this is actually something that's been kind of brought up in the Android world as of lately. You can see with the Nexus 6P, they, instead of having a camera bulge there, they kind of made it go across the entire back, and it looked really bad in a lot of the screenshots. Obviously, you can see the Nexus 5 has the camera bulge, but like that's an arguable thing. I don't think that looks as good, but maybe laying on a table is it more functional? Maybe, I guess. But a lot of people made fun of how this looks, and then like from the side, it looks a little bit kind of goofy. So there's always a trade-off of going either route, I guess.
It's interesting as well because people got to think of like the dynamics of a phone, right? When it's laying flat, when you have something flat laying on a flat surface, it becomes harder to pick up. So if it has a bulge and if it has a little bit of lift, it actually is easier to pick up from a rested position. So there are benefits. There are obviously just people who are not going to like it because they don't think it's a good aesthetic for the device. But such a small menial thing to be talking about in regards to Priv. I'm just glad we got some solid images to go off of. So then again, you want this device is coming out. You want us to promote it. We need something to do that with. So kudos to BlackBerry for at least getting some feedback, or at least timing very well to get that image out, along with some of the other ones.
And we obviously know that there's going to be more coming as well, because that's, as we know from the previous launches that they've done recently, like with the Passport and stuff like that. I mean, pretty much from the Passport on, they were kind of smart in regards to how they rolled out the information. You get the images first, and then you get some of the specs, and then you get a hands-on with it, which was at the time done by Donnie or somebody, but now Melanie has taken over them. So we'll they're going to slowly tease us and roll that stuff out. To be perfectly honest, I'm kind of quite surprised that we're not actually seeing more leaks of it at this point in time. Like I fully expected somebody else to go ahead and do a hands-on video before BlackBerry could even get their official hands-on video out. Because there's plenty of the Privs out there in the wild, so it just seems interesting.
A lot of Privs in the wild.
Yeah, there's it. I don't know how to explain it. It just seems interesting that this hasn't gotten another hands-on as of yet.
Don't worry, Chris. I'll probably snap a few pictures and a few videos.
Yeah, I figured. I mean,
in the wild before BlackBerry puts up videos.
I figure you'd be sitting there somewhere in the bushes with a telephoto lens or something. Brandon's gonna step up his game from waiting in the line at TIFF. He's got a new camera, got a camouflage outfit.
I'm sleeping in front of BlackBerry HQ and just wait until people walk in with their Privs and stuff. Videos.
So, it's interesting because they're gonna, obviously we know that they're gonna roll more stuff out eventually, right? So,
Brandon, I wanted to hear a little bit from you in regard to PR. Tell us about it. I mean, tell us how well this device is being received thus far.
Okay, so everybody's familiar with the John Chen interview with BNN. I mean, it wasn't the best interview, but to me personally, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I thought, he didn't do the best job, but whatever. It's a nice. He's just excited about the device, and at least it's out there. People know it's there, right? But my girlfriend, who's studying public relations for post-grad, apparently it was a big deal because it was actually brought up as a class topic to discuss about, and they had some professionals from PR do PR for some of the biggest companies in North America, and they were talking about how it was a horrible move because it was the first actual interview showing off the device, official show off of the device, and it was just poorly, John Chen stumbled, and it was just not the best foot to show the device on. That's what they were saying. And what was funny after that was that actually the professor brought up an image saying how it was bad because it just had a leak previously the week before, and it ended up being that image I took from TIFF. So my girlfriend was laughing about it, yeah, you pretty much ruined BlackBerry. I'm like, oh. But yeah, no, it just surprises me how much of an effect this John Chen interview had, because me personally, I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but news sources and everybody has been talking about it nonstop. I know in our BerryFlow group, we've been talking about it at least once a day since it's happened, and I mean, I just can't believe it has that many. I just can't believe it has the legs to run on that interview.
Yeah.
And every comment we've made has been absolutely positive about the video. I want to clarify that as well.
No, I've listened to a few Android podcasts over the last few weeks, and a lot of them are complaining so much about that interview. It's they in the title they're like, oh, we're talking about the Priv in this episode. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna listen to this. I'm curious how what they have to say about it. And they spent the first 10 minutes about how bad the interview was, and then it's the last 2 minutes. Oh, I don't really want to a keyboard device, but I guess I can see someone maybe wanting it and they call it, and that was like it. It was like, so 10 minutes of joking about this interview, and then I get to hear 2 minutes of your actual opinions about the phone. So it's a little bit depressing from that standpoint, because I'm sure a lot of people who listen to those podcasts regularly, the first time they actually hear about this phone is from them laughing at it essentially over the interview, and it was like, I don't know, just a little bit sad. Hopefully it doesn't affect everything too much,
I
but
mean, it was a terrible outing of the device. I don't think there's anybody who could really say that it wasn't. I mean, it was a bad first experience to be able to go ahead and show it in that manner. However, just like anything else in the BlackBerry world, if it's something somewhat negative, just because it's BlackBerry, it gets amplified 1,000 times over,
I
right?
think the worst thing he said wasn't so much the fact that he didn't know how to use it. I think it was that he kind of poo-pooed social networking on the device, which is kind of like, you want to demonstrate the device as being Android and being able to use all these apps, but when you go around and say, who has time to use Twitter and stuff like that, it's like, well, like
your entire demographic.
Eventually, people are just going to forget about it. It's going to become one of those things that they look back in like 5 years and they say, "Oh, well, this is something terrible that BlackBerry did in their history." I said it before. I believe it was like on the last Upstream that they probably should have never actually allowed BNN to post it, but it is what it is, and.
Even like John Chen should have had like some wherewithal to be like, yo, let's retake that, I feel better now, like something like that. But no, just let it roll as is. And we talk about this as well when we talk about PR. It's like publicity is publicity. Get it any way you can, because what's really going to define the device is going to be the device. The lead up to it is not what people's impressions are going to stay at.
Yeah, but I agree with that, but at the same time I don't, because like I said, a lot of people they prey on the negativity surrounding BlackBerry. Like I said, they'll take anything negative and amplify it by 1,000, and there you go. They'll present that
I'm kind of at a point where that amplification is almost like hitting a vacuum. It's like it's been so overdone that it's just noise, like it has no meaning anymore because it's the status quo at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, people prey on the negativity, and it doesn't even matter anymore because, like you said, it's status quo. Like you expect that negativity to arise, but eventually it's gonna fall off, and then it'll.
Yeah.
It'll just be something that they refer to in stupid quotes and shit.
Yeah. The only thing I will say is that, like, in this case, I really do think that no news is bad news. Like, any press is good press, because in reality he wasn't really offending anybody with anything he did. He just kind of looked like a football, for an instance, or somebody who he just looked like he didn't know how to use the device. So it wasn't like a CEO saying a really dumb comment that would alienate an entire user base that could be potential purchasers. There's nothing like that really gonna offend anybody to be like, no, I'm not gonna buy a BlackBerry now. So I mean, like, in reality, it's really a non-starter. It's a non-issue really. It's just in 2 weeks, no one's gonna remember it happened.
And I guess
it runs the Google.
Yeah, the biggest. I mean, that's probably the biggest ongoing joke with it is that he never actually said Android. He said Google. So it runs the Googles is going to be like the quote that everybody's going to run with.
Loads up mock it, makes the mock, puts it in social media. What'd you have for us, Alex?
I wonder if, this got more publicity than it would have had it been a great demo or like an okay demo. Obviously, a lot of these places probably would never have even covered it. So I kind of wonder, maybe more eyes have seen it because they're like, oh, did you hear about that terrible demonstration? Oh, I'll go check it out. And it's like, oh, that phone actually looks interesting. I didn't even know BlackBerry was doing that kind of stuff. So it could work both ways.
I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that it was passed around more because it was a bad demo than anything else. So in reality, it was a bad thing, but more people are aware that BlackBerry's building an Android device now. So
yeah.
It's funny as well because again it attracts attention.
Yeah.
people may have not even been interested in Priv, but when they see like one of those, the Schadenfreude of how people love to hate on BlackBerry, it's going to bring them into the conversation. Like, well, that's different than what I thought a BlackBerry was, right? And it gets the wheels churning. Blaze, tell us about this Crackberry poll you guys did. I know you've done a couple on Priv interest. Has it changed over time? Does the community seem receptive to a device like this? I mean, I know I voted yes when I previously voted no. So at least I'm a little bit swayed at this point, trying to support BlackBerry. What's the community feeling?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it all, like you said, we ran a poll previously, basically before when like all of the Android rumors had been out there, and it wasn't. At that point in time, it wasn't even necessarily around the Priv because most people didn't know that the Priv would be running Android at that point in time when I ran it. It was just basically based off of some of the rumors, right? So previously, I ran the poll that basically said, "Would you buy an Android-based BlackBerry?" At that point in time, let's put a time frame on it. That was back in June. So we ran that poll, and the results of that poll were pretty much as expected. The options that I gave: would you buy an Android device? No, if it's not running BlackBerry 10, I don't want it. Maybe we'll wait and see how it plays out. Or yes, I'd love to see BlackBerry hardware coupled with the Android ecosystem. So when we ran that poll, 53.86% said no, they wouldn't buy an Android-based BlackBerry ever, right? So that was basically the BlackBerry 10 hardcore fans saying like, look, I don't want nothing but BlackBerry. BlackBerry 10, and we ran the new poll, which asks a simple question now with everything that we have available to us. Are you planning on buying the new Priv by BlackBerry? And this one, although the results weren't necessarily as dramatic, I mean, they are still kind of dramatic. They just weren't necessarily as high. So when I asked that question, it was, yeah, I'm already sold on it, or maybe I'm still on the fence, or nope, they can keep it. 43.7% of people basically said, yeah, they're already sold on the Priv and they'll buy it. There's obviously some difference there in between like what the community really wants, because you can't jam every option into a poll, but the majority of the people basically said that they're sold on it, they're interested in it at least, and 32.06% maybe only said maybe, that they're still on the fence about it. So there's definitely the overwhelming majority, I guess you could say, if you wanted to be dramatic about it, that are totally interested in it. And there's more folks that are still a little on the fence. But being a little on the fence, to me, seems that they'll probably at least go to a store or whatever and give it a shot and give it a look and see how they feel about it at that point in time. Which is before, there was 24.49% of people that said maybe, and this time around it's 32.06% that said maybe. So even the maybes are up in regards to the Priv. So again, like when we look at the numbers on Crackberry, it's obviously very focused to the Crackberry community, but for me to look at it and discount any of that would be pretty stupid. So I think it's safe to say that BlackBerry has appealed to a lot of people, even though it is an Android device, and people didn't necessarily want an Android device at first. They've sort of swayed their opinion and are at least willing to go ahead and give it a shot, at least by the numbers, anyways.
I showed my sister the Priv, and she's like, she thought it was a touchscreen at first because I showed her an image of it closed. She's like, oh, but does it have a keyboard? I'm like, yeah, it slides up like the torch. She's like, oh, I want it. And I'm like, just so that you know, it runs like Android, not BlackBerry 10. She's like, I don't care. I want
Even
it.
better.
So, I mean, like, there's a whole bunch of people like that who want to stick with BlackBerry just because of the keyboard and stuff like that, and they're not so attached to the operating system. So there is a whole bunch of there is a whole chunk of people like that.
There's a whole bunch of chunk.
Chunk, I love you, Chunk.
Even I, was using a QWERTY device, like having the Q10 and various things and mess around with the passport. But it's like I've really been a Z10 kind of person, all touch device, and then like the Z30. And going from using the Z30 for like 2 years, it's really tough to go back to a small screen after that. So like I do miss the keyboard. But I'm so used to the full screen. I really think if I had to choose between one or the other, I would say I'd just get an all-touch device. Well, the fact that the Priv is just going to be on Android, it's literally the perfect device for what I want. Like, I could actually have a keyboard and still love my all-touch device. Like, it's what I want. So, regardless of it being Android, I would have just given it a shot. Anyway, obviously it would be great if it was BlackBerry 10 and if they had apps and everything, but, like, I think it's, like, the perfect device for a lot of people who don't want to go to a keyboard device standalone because they really love the all-touch experience for 90% of how they use it.
Brian back there is definitely like slider material. So
Oh, absolutely.
as long as Brian's happy, then we'll be fine. Blaze, there was a really interesting post on Crackberry this past week where you took basically a closer look at some of these slider images that BlackBerry put out of the Priv and some of their official postings on Inside BlackBerry. You were mentioning kind of looking at some of the icons, matching up some of what's seen on screen with what's also seen on the keyboard. Would you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, so when the pictures went up, I mean, everybody obviously went ahead and had, the real quick look at them and did the slight bit of drooling. But when you actually take a deeper look into the pictures, you start to notice some interesting things that haven't necessarily been highlighted before. The guys over at BlackBerry's RU were kind enough to go ahead and edit the image. But if you look at the home screen, I guess you could say, on the device, there's an application there called Detect, and it kind of looks like the BBM icon, but then again, there's like this dude that's popping out of the side of the door or whatever in the actual icon, which has obviously led people to believe that it's some sort of security application at that point in time, like somebody's creeping in on your business, and it sort of leans towards the whole privacy aspect of the device itself. And the interesting thing is that there's no information anywhere in Google or anything in regards to what this Detect app actually is. Now, obviously, Detect seems like a play on detect. And John
Get
Chen
out of here!
Yeah,
No way.
just in case nobody was clear on that, in case somebody didn't catch that one. But basically, John Chen laid out in one of his interviews, I believe it was with like the Globe and Mail. He specifically said we will have technology that will help the individual know if they have been snooped, attacked, compromised, allowing you to also have on-screen notifications that measure your vulnerability, and individuals will be able to tell if anything is happening to them. So if you take a look at that app and then you take a look at what John Chen said, it would seem as though that BlackBerry sort of tossed us a bone to get us a little bit more curious as to what's going on with this Detect app. Whether or not that was intentional, whether or not that was a mistake, who knows, right? Maybe it's just all in our heads, and BlackBerry really didn't give a damn if anybody noticed the Detect app. But either way, it's an interesting icon. It's an application from something that we haven't seen before, and realistically, there's, based on what we know now, there's plenty of applications in the Google Play Store that do similar things. Like Lookout has all their virus applications, and Norton and all that stuff. They can replicate similar functions. But again, leaning towards the privacy of Priv, BlackBerry has taken it upon themselves to go ahead and add their little bits of BlackBerry-ness into the Android ecosystem, especially on Priv. So that seems to be like one of the things that they have going for them. The only thing is like, we're really just guessing at this point as to what this Detect icon actually is and what it does, right?
I gotta say, that Detect icon looks fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think a guy's gonna like kill somebody.
It's kind of creepy, but that I guess that's kind of like shock value. Open it up and check and see what it is. The other interesting thing when it comes down to the keyboard and the again with the home screen itself, I don't necessarily know what's going on here, and I can't even really wager a guess on it. I mean, I can, but I've been actually told that my guess is wrong. So um, I have no actual clarification on what it actually is, but I've been told that my guess is wrong. So if you look,
I've been told I am incorrect. However,
yeah. However, if you look at some of the icons on the home screen, some of them have like that 3-dot menu system below them, and it's not necessarily all of the icons either. It's only specific icons. In the example given, of course, we have BBM, Calendar, and the Play Store, and Google Chrome, which has that essentially 3-dot menu system right
I
below
didn't
it.
see Chrome had it too.
Yeah.
Place
Wow.
And so, I mean, when you look at the actual keyboard too, that 3-dot menu system is essentially the same on the keyboard, and there was a lot of hoopla made about the keyboard before and that 3-dot icon, because people thought that it was fake because it appeared in some and it didn't appear in others. So to me, that it at least looks like there's some sort of relation between the 3-dot menu that's on the actual keyboard and the 3-dot menu that is showing under specific applications. Now, whether or not that's a keyboard shortcut, my idea was basically, say for example you have the device open and you need to access some sort of additional options for those applications that are highlighted, like BBM and Calendar and stuff like that. Rather than actually reaching up and touching the display, you could actually just push the 3-dot menu on the keyboard, and then those things sort of pop up, and you can use the keyboard. Again, alleviating the problem of actually having to reach out and touch the display in order to access that stuff, right? Kind of makes sense to me. May not make sense to anybody else, but
no, it's a very good observation. I was actually speaking with the folks over at blackberries.ru, and they suggested that the 3 dots was signifying the app's attachment to a widget on the device. So if like let's say the BBM had a 3-dot, there was also a widget on the Android OS that was open with the BBM as well. So Calendar, Play Store, and Chrome would have little widgets available. But again, all speculation at this point. But again, it's good to get the conversation going about it because last podcast I was talking about I wish BlackBerry did more BlackBerry stuff. Now we're seeing DTech. Now we're seeing some modifications of the overall Android UI and the overall flow of perhaps the OS. So very cool to see that BlackBerryfication. Wow, that was a mouthful.
I want to throw one idea out. Probably not, but like we've seen the 3D touch aspect for iPhones, and essentially that's like you could click on the icon and then you get prompted with kind of like an overflow menu of a few quick actions to do. And if you turn these 3 buttons and do them vertical, that's always the overflow menu. That's always like what the overflow menu was. So like if you were to click that, maybe like BBM, maybe you can quick BBM somewhere, quick go to channels, or quick something, or browser, quick go to private mode, or quick whatever. I guess there's so many things, and the question too is like, is this definitely BlackBerry exclusive, or is this actually on Android M? Like, are these 3 dots, have they been seen on Android M?
Well, it's not on Android M. It's not on any. Like, I have a few Android devices here, and I double checked. It's not on any Android implementation as of yet. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Just to be clear, what I mentioned, my idea there, is what I was told was wrong. So
Sorry, just to make sure, this screen here. It's running the Google. It's running the Google.
Yeah, it's running Tizen actually.
Does anybody else feel like it has like a little bit too much though? Because it like three dots there, 3 dots, 3 dots, 3 dots, 3 dots, 3 dots, 3 dots.
Threes, man.
I feel like there's a lot of 3 dots going on.
There's saying in Spanish that says there's no 2 without 3. So I mean,
Oh.
Threes lucky, man. Everything happens in 3s.
I kind of like it, and personally, I don't think it's going to be on every single app. But again,
No.
allowing the user the option and the availability to really have productivity features baked in, we know that's what it's going to be, right? If anything, it will be to make the device more productive. BlackBerry is not very like useless in terms of their additions to different things. You can see that on BlackBerry 10. They're very minimal, but they always want to elevate that experience a little bit. In terms of the Priv device, this device should have everything, right? We should have NFC. We should have maybe even quick charging, depending on what the device is running. The only real mystery right now is that battery. Have you guys heard any battery estimates? I was hearing somewhere 3650, which is 200 more milliamps than the Passport. But again, I would love even more than that. Samsung's putting out a phone with like 5,700 milliamps. things a tablet.
But that has to translate into actual like real hours for people that care. Because one thing is to have specs, but as we've known time and time again with Android devices, we've seen Android devices with massive batteries who don't last more than a day. Like,
I don't know, man. I think
that
I don't.
takes up so much power. So I mean, it's got to come down to the actual usable hours that you can use the device.
It has to, and I don't necessarily disagree with you, but at this point in time, I think a lot of people just see a number, and if it doesn't match that number, they automatically dismiss it. So it needs to be a reasonably high number. Like
High
if they,
enough, yeah.
yeah, like it. I don't even know the exact number as to what the battery is. Like I've heard anywhere is from 3,000 milliamp to 3,000 or 3,300 milliamp to 3,650 milliamp. So I don't know. In my head, I am also one of those people who looks at the number and basically says, okay, well that's probably not going to be that good. But to me, anything over 3,000 milliamp per hour is probably going to be sufficient for my use case at this point in time. And I think the majority of people would be fine with that. If it comes in around 3,300 or 3,600, as long as it's over 3,000, I'm pretty much good.
Yeah, I don't want to step back. You've set the bar now with Passport at 3,450. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna need at least that, right? I mean, as me personally, like LG's latest phone, what is it, the Vi or the V10? It has a removable 3,450 battery. So
Yeah,
you've
and
you've no excuses, BlackBerry, none.
honestly, that's a pretty dope looking phone too.
Yeah, it's got like two screens. It is pretty nifty.
Yeah, and you can disable like the second screen. I made fun of it because they sort of created a word like they did selfies and they did groofies. And I'm like, what the hell's a groofie, man?
Groovy sounds like something you give a girl when you're trying to take her home and she doesn't want to come. But we don't endorse that, of course. So we got the poll results from the Priv. People seem a lot more interested in it. The momentum is picking up. We talked about some of the highlights that were actually seen in those official images, but we also got a new BlackBerry 10 OS.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is the BlackBerry 10.3.2789. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but this is the OS from T-Mobile that brings in things like Wi-Fi calling. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, it basically was dedicated for T-Mobile. It was pretty much basically their own operating system and rolled out to them, but anybody who has dealt with autoloaders and stuff like that automatically knows that there's no OS that is specific to any one carrier. As soon as they get uploaded to the server, then everybody can go ahead and download it for their specific device. There's some interesting things going on with that OS though. There's some new apps that are listed in there. They don't necessarily appear, but they are listed. There's some, I believe there was 2 or 3 new apps that are kind of like lingering around in the text if you actually dig through some of the.
Interesting.
There's I'm trying to recall the name. There was like one app that was called BlackBerry Reflect or something like that was in there. And it also seems that Wi-Fi calling, even though T-Mobile basically said that this is specifically for the Classic, it opened the doors to pretty much all of the devices to be able to go ahead and accept Wi-Fi calling. Like there was people with AT&T passports that were using T-Mobile and had Wi-Fi calling on there. So they removed that. I don't know what you want to call it, a block list or whatever. from the T-Mobile from the Wi-Fi calling aspect of it. Also, even customers who are on T-Mobile not using a BlackBerry Classic have access to some of the Wi-Fi calling.
Very, very interesting. And it's good to see that support continue for BlackBerry 10, right? If it was really a cast-off at this point, it wouldn't be getting that kind of support. But there's a user base who's still buying these devices, and they still need support. I mean, we literally have a roadmap for this OS out until probably middle of next year. So I mean, there's a lot that may still be able to come on, and we're seeing hints of these new apps and things like that. Go to the security route, own it, go all the way with it, right? And Android can be your consumer play. I think it's a smart move for BlackBerry, but they've got to execute well on it, and that's my only worry because we've seen BlackBerry execute in the past, and you know, not to go back and rehash any of that, but like, everything about this device looked good right up until the name, you know, and I just hope it doesn't regress any further than that, you know. I hope we can move forward beyond the name because, again, it's useless, it's meaningless.
I think BlackBerry actually did a good. They executed, I think, the best in the past 3 years on the Passport. I think that was the best executed launch of something they've done. So I think if they keep whatever they did there and just not screw it up and do it better for the Priv, I think they'll be, you know, make good work out of it.
The Passport had a unique story to tell, and they're even though that we've seen a lot of the Priv and we know what the Priv name stands for and stuff like that.
Who are you aiming it at? Yeah.
They still haven't told us the full story on the Priv, and the story is going to help sell it. So hopefully they get around to actually selling us on the story soon.
So we have work wide with the Passport. We're gonna have work tall with the Priv.
Well, it was work narrow in their initial kind of when they showed off. It was like you could work narrow or you could work wide. I think
with that slider open, man, it's gonna be tall.
I think what they're gonna go for is you can work slide. You know, where you can do the SmartSlide if you're starting to type a message and you're like, you know what, I'm about to go in SmartSlide and I can just continue typing.
Yeah.
That would be pretty nifty and even more so.
Work wide or work slide. I like that, man.
Work slide. You know, it sounds like something Brandon would do for sure. Jokes all day on Brandon, guys.
Guy.
Alex was getting too much of it. So, Alex was getting too much. So, bring Brandon in to take some of that heat. So there is a Blitz OS out there. Check it out on CB. Get it if your device is acting a little funky. Maybe this one will act a little less funky for you, but I doubt it. BBM updates across the board. I love that BBM showed some love to the Apple Watch, getting there before a lot of big messaging companies in the space like Facebook and WhatsApp, when really those two companies are the exact same. What do you guys think about BlackBerry's focus on, and specifically BBM's focus on, getting to these wearable endpoints but not giving us BBM video cross-platform? Do you think that's a good focus for them right now, building an app peripheral, or to build out the service features of BBM? I'd really like to hear you guys' thoughts on this.
I think the app peripheral is more important because those are things that are going to give that value add to people who are already using the service, who might think of jumping ship because another app that they have. So for instance, say you buy an Apple Watch and you're like, man, I really want to use my Apple Watch because I can get notifications on my watch and reply to notifications. But if you spend $800 on an Apple Watch and then you can't reply to your BBMs, you're going to be like, well, I'd rather use this messaging because then I can make use of this $800 purchase, right? So I think it's really important for them to get into the wearables game because then it gives people the ability to still have that value-added experience using BBM, especially with all these new types of devices like the Apple Watch or Android Wear that come out. So I think it's a smart move. Whereas the video calling would be a way of attracting new users, but as we've discussed previously, it really depends on. It's really up for debate how many new users are going to get from that and what kind of a revenue scheme that's going to have, because they're going to have to pay for the servers to have all these new people using video calling. So if you automatically add this new free feature, that's going to be an added cost to the existing infrastructure, and it's not really quite clear how they're going to be able to make money through that. Whereas with wearables, there's no back-end infrastructure that's required.
not to get the BBM teams to charge me more because they're already taking monthly. Like they're worse than my bills, man. My rent check and then BBM. It's tough out there for a shrimp. But I would honestly pay $5 a month for cross-platform video to offset some of that cost. Now, would every user? No. Some people are not going to want that. They've already established BBM meetings as that kind of go-to platform. Brandon's second girlfriend. this chat kills me. But I mean, Brandon's right. If they add in a lot on top of BBM, it becomes more costly for them, and they're already having a hard time monetizing it. So something's got to give in terms of where the value is. Brandon mentioned going to peripherals may be a little bit smarter, and I think if BlackBerry can hone in on the users who are using smart devices like watches and other accessories and peripherals, it kind of establishes BBM in a place where it's a little bit more of a modern perspective on technology, whereas opposed to there's a lot of old and kind of legacy sentiment around what BlackBerry does. So if you're on the latest and greatest type of devices with your services, again, it elevates you into a more modern sense for your users. So I think BlackBerry is doing a really smart job doing that. Cross-platform video, everybody's doing it. Skype's doing it. Skype will translate for you,
Having said that though, it's good to get it on peripherals and have it work well. It's better to do that than have it for the sake of having it on peripherals and then being such a horrible experience and no one uses it. So I haven't used it yet, I haven't seen it, but I pray to God it works well.
I just had a conversation with my buddy yesterday when we were all a few of my friends were out eating dinner, and he has the new iPhone 6 Plus or 6S Plus, and he was showing me it, and he's like, battery life's great, blah 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 blah. And then he said, what's frustrating is our group, we just use normal SMS. We have a group SMS, and that's how we communicate, like 7 or 8 of my friends. And it's annoying. I don't like having to, SMS as a group because it's terrible. You don't have very much control over it, and if I lower the volume of it, it does it for the entire phone. It's just an annoyance. And he shared the same thing where it was like, I would be totally happy if we used something else, like if we used WhatsApp or if we used just, even BBM or anything. It's like, let's use something in place of that. But the problem is no one kind of wants to submit to it. And then if you have an iPhone, you like iMessage, and then we have the discussions of like, well, do you have the read and writes turned on or off when you're using iMessage? He's like, I turn it off because everyone else turns it off. And I'm like, well, that defeats the purpose. And he's like, I know. If everyone else had it on, I would leave it on. So it's like a lot of people, it's from what I'm talking to them, they like the concept of BBM, but they're just not using it because other people aren't using it. So if they like start pushing it on the watch first and start changing the perception, like we really care about cross-platform, we're gonna have a great BBM experience on iPhone, Android, or BlackBerry 10, everything, and then even wearables. If they could change the mindset that BBM is innovative and it's front of the line, like we're trying to get it out there and be that one messaging platform, I think it just shows, the fact that they came out first in wearables, even though a lot of people probably aren't going to use it. I think it just shows overall that they want to be,
Yeah, it helps with their overall perception.
Yeah.
I'm just happy now that once the Priv actually comes out, like I'll be able to be a part of like that Android Wear stuff. Because I don't use an iPhone, so I'm not going to be using BBM on my iPhone, but I will have a Priv, and where the Priv runs Android, that opens up the doors to go ahead and purchase an Android Wear device at that point in time as well, because then I'll be able to use BBM on Android Wear. So it's a good thing that they've implemented, and I agree with Alex and Brandon. Like a lot of their focus, I don't think that their focus should be on cross-platform video because that's a watered down market as of yet, where Android Wear and the Apple Watch and everything like that is still, the wearable segment is still a little bit fresh and people pay attention to it more. And if BlackBerry is there and they are putting their name to it, then it gets a little bit more attention than what it regularly would. Nobody cares about cross-platform video because of the fact that it's everywhere at this point.
Yeah,
in time, right?
If I have to use Skype or if I have to use Google Hangouts, whatever. At this point, if I don't.
Right, you have so many options, and even though it's frustrating that it's
and it would
not
be
there,
more convenient. Yeah.
Yeah, even though that it's frustrating that it's not there on BB10 or on Android or iOS, at least for BBM, it's okay because they're doing something else, which is much more beneficial to the perception of what BBM actually is and what it hopes to accomplish. So I'm perfectly fine with it.
I'm not gonna lie, like that was probably the biggest surprise of the week for me that BBM was on Apple Watch. I'd like honestly on a scale of things I was expecting to ever hear from BlackBerry, I honestly didn't expect that anywhere like close to now.
Can we just like say though that the update wasn't exactly the best?
Wow, we're gonna get there. It wasn't an update across all platforms. BlackBerry 10 got the least amount of actual love. Alex, it actually took away his beta access to PayPal and some of the other features. No sticker club for Alex. Shame on BlackBerry.
What was the beta for if it wasn't actually going to be rolled out? I don't understand. I'm confused.
Maybe they, maybe things didn't. Maybe they updated it, but like forgot to put the file in BlackBerry World. So it's like
I don't know, man.
Published the update, but didn't actually give us the update.
Hey,
and
look.
Maybe
Android got 2 updates because they were basically fixing what they messed up in the first place, and iOS got 2 updates for the exact same reason, and BlackBerry 10 never got no update, and there's still people out there with like BlackBerry Protect that's broken and such. So I don't know what to say about that, but it's frustrating when you take away something that was working perfectly fine within beta to replace it with something that seems, slightly off. That's all I'm saying. Like, if everything was present in beta, then why wasn't it rolled out to everybody? Because it was very, very confusing. Like, even the changelog said, here is PayPal, here is Sticker Club, but there was no mention of like, the regional aspects of it or anything along those lines. Like, why didn't somebody mention that?
It seemed very half-cooked, like we're kind of laying the foundation. We got to give you this update so that we can actually give you the update type of thing, It's kind of all over the place. Interesting, group pictures show up in feeds, and I didn't see that before in BBM, so I thought that was kind of an interesting way to unify, because I'm in feeds all the time, and it was cool to see, I missed this picture in the group. But it's here in my feeds, and I can interact with it very, very easily. So updates are updates. We really just want to keep seeing these updates. Like every couple of months, give us something with BBM and keep that ball going.
And where's the Facebook update, yo? Where's the Twitter update, yo?
Where's the LinkedIn update, yo?
Anyways, Alex said to be positive, and I'm being positive. I'm just saying these things do need some recognition, and they need to be fixed. Okay?
Blaze is positively annoyed that
my Twitter still has like Discover from like May this past year.
Yeah, like why do I have Ellen at like the Oscars or whatever in my Twitter thing?
Yeah,
it was like months ago, man. Fix that.
It's like a permanent Samsung ad in your Discover feed.
Pretty much. Oh my God, I didn't even think about that.
Boom.
Wow.
Boom. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, BlackBerry borked that one for sure. But that's what happens when you start trending. And it's interesting. We saw BlackBerry with the Priv announcement actually get some hashtags and get some extra kind of elevated showcasing in the trending topics on Twitter. And it was BlackBerry Priv, which I thought was kind of amusing, and it was above iPhone 6 as that phone like literally just launched. So pretty cool that it is getting the traction overall. I mean, that's solid. We covered most of our topics. Alex, do we have any topics and suggestions from our patrons on the BBM channel?
Yes, so from Mike Robinson, we have a good question about BlackBerry 10. Of course, BlackBerry 10 still exists and people want to talk about it. So if BB10 is dropped by BlackBerry, would it just be left to die, or could it be licensed or spun off for other companies?
I think, personally, that time is probably past. I think that was something you wanted to do before BB10 launched, maybe not after it launched.
Arguably, they already tried that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's gonna, like, BlackBerry 10 OS will probably end up kicking the can. But a lot of the stuff that went into BlackBerry 10, like the QNX kernel and stuff like that, it's still very much applicable on the other side of things, and their other side of the business, which is IoT, the Internet of Things, and machine-to-machine communication. So like the foundation of BlackBerry 10 will still be used. It's just you're not going to see the actual BlackBerry 10 operating system most likely.
Others, yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree. And really, if you think about it, now they've established 1.5 gigahertz dual core and 2 gigabytes of RAM as a reference platform for BB10. Imagine putting that same reference platform in a car or in another connected piece of embedded equipment, right? A medical device, etc. We've upped the spec list, even Passport. Think about it. Now we have a reference platform that's pretty powerful, 3 gigabytes of RAM, quad core, with good Adrenos and all that stuff, with a lot of accessibility and different connections to things like NFC, Miracast, Wi-Fi Direct, etc. The possibilities for the platform of BB10 are there, but the brand recognition of BB10 is dead. And really, we're going to be seeing this hightailed over to the enterprise side of things, focusing on security and privacy, because really, there's no consumer interest in it. We obviously are interested consumers in it, definitely, and we would buy a Priv running BlackBerry 10. But that doesn't mean that's going to be a viable alternative for BlackBerry as a business going forward. So, what else do we have from our patrons, Alex?
Then we actually have maybe Mike's brother or cousin or someone, Mark Robinson. He's wondering, we already had a bit of a discussion about the battery on the Priv, but he essentially wants to know if it will be robust enough to get us through the day, because that's so important for him. And realistically, no matter the size of the battery, I think BlackBerry knows with the Passport, they were touting how great of a battery it is and how it'll get you through a couple days, and it's a workhorse. So I can't really imagine them just changing all of a sudden and kind of be like, well, battery out the window, we're just going to focus on creating this awesome looking device. And I think BlackBerry understands how important battery life is to people.
Yeah.
I think it will get us through the day, and then along with all of the modifications coming to Android Marshmallow with Doze, where they're just focusing on improving battery life, I think it should be all right.
I don't think BlackBerry aspires to go ahead and give you a crappy battery. That's never their intention. I mean,
nor a crappy camera either. Because that's, look at Brandon's photos on his Z10. I mean, brilliant.
But that's the thing with BlackBerry though, is that they've always placed battery a little bit ahead, and obviously somebody's gonna jump at the chance to basically say, well, they didn't take care of it with the Z10. Well, the Z10 is kind of a little bit of an exception because of the fact that, there was a lot of changes. The Z10 was one of the first devices with BlackBerry 10, and they didn't necessarily know the full advantage of what the operating system would do as they essentially grew it. So, yeah, the Z10 is one of those off cases where it started out having great battery life, but then the operating system grew. It expanded, they added more features to it, and now the Z10 isn't necessarily up to par with what they would, normally release. But I don't think any other BlackBerry 10 device has been terrible in regards to battery life. There's always been a pretty fine middle ground when it comes to getting you through your day. And the Passport excels beyond that, so hopefully they'll continue that tradition and maintain it. Hopefully they do take advantage of everything on the Priv that is like Alex said, in Android Marshmallow with Doze, and stopping your notifications and disconnecting whatever isn't necessarily in use or whatever the case may be. Which also brings up another question. It's going to be interesting to see how fast BlackBerry can roll out Marshmallow too.
Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit in the chat, in the actual upstream chat here, because Alex is like, it will get it soon, and I'm like, maybe, maybe not, especially if they're modifying some of the underlying bits there to get that security experience. I spoke with one of our patrons, Mr. Tim, and we had a really interesting conversation. He mentions, I was looking at the download options on Evernote website, and it has all of them except for BlackBerry. Oversight or wind down and support. I would have thought promoting its support to non-BlackBerry users would be good, even though it's pre-installed, and I think that's kind of a fair point. But at the same point, right, obviously it makes sense from a logic perspective, but BlackBerry is building a lot of these apps themselves, like Facebook, Twitter, even Evernote. A lot of those are built in-house with agreements in place by the companies to do so. So, you know, they may seem like, yeah, we have an app, but we don't actually have the app. It's BlackBerry's app for us. So
Yeah.
from a marketing perspective, it does kind of hurt them because they do have some app support and they have good apps at the same point, right? But we've seen even some of those apps are kind of falling by the wayside in terms of support. So I'm hoping there's some kind of update coming to fix those gaps for us.
And that's kind of one of the biggest things. They want consistency across apps. So like if you are updating the iOS and Android app, like as a company you're focusing on that, you're going to advertise that you support Android and iOS, because if you implement a new feature and you claim that you support BB10 as well and the new feature never makes it to BlackBerry 10, you're going to have people yelling at you as Evernote, even though BlackBerry is the one making all of the, you know, the app updates and things. So obviously they're going to focus on their own apps that they're actually building in-house rather than saying, even though BlackBerry 10 is supported. I know Pushbullet, they will actually advertise and be like, oh, we also have a Pushbullet app on Windows Phone and BlackBerry 10, and they say, but they're community-made apps, and it really focuses on, you know, we have nothing to do with it. They're community-made apps, but they are available. So that is also like one way that they can do it, but it's kind of, you know, it's difficult. I think they would rather just having to support less places. It's easier.
That's always been the scenario, though. Like you go to, I don't know, just pick whatever random website and say, you know, do you have a BlackBerry 10 app? You know, chances are they don't actually advertise that, which is basically one of the reasons as to why a lot of people didn't know that some of these apps existed, because there was no get it on Google Play or get it on BlackBerry World logo there, even though that they had an app for it. You know, it's arguable whether or not BlackBerry could have improved upon that. I don't necessarily think that they could have. I mean, they maybe put restrictions in place so that people had to advertise it, but you know that becomes problematic as well because there's certain people that just don't want to do that kind of stuff. It's always been something that's been there. Even WhatsApp now. WhatsApp, basically, they still push out beta updates and they still push out new releases, but if you actually email WhatsApp support will tell you that the BlackBerry 10 application isn't supported through any sort of customer service. It's just kind of there. Like, it exists, it works, it's available for download, but they don't actually support it.
Yeah.
It's WhatsApp. Who cares? No, I'm just kidding. WhatsApp is definitely a good thing to have on the platform because there are users, especially overseas, who are going to be using it. So it is cool that at least we're able to speak on some of those questions from the community. We have a couple here from Chris, who literally just commented to get his feedback, and Mr. Krevling. How do you think the Priv will fare with carrier updates now that they will be utilizing Android, especially with Google putting out security patches to handle stuff like Stage Fright 2.0? Basically, would BlackBerry still encounter roadblocks with the carriers? So what are your thoughts on that? I want to hear Brandon. Do you think carrier support's going to be better or worse moving Android versus BlackBerry 10?
I think it's going to be better because they have a product that they probably feel like they can get mass appeal. They can get a lot of people behind it. Especially in the U.S., there's an appetite for people. They want to... The thing I get from the United States is that a lot of people, they want to be more secure, they want to feel more secure. It just takes too much effort for them to become secure. It takes too much effort to switch over to BlackBerry 10 or to do some other stuff. So if you give them an opportunity to use the Priv, which is Android itself, and it's touted as a bit more secure than your other Android alternatives, then I think you could get a good chunk of people who are willing to take that jump or take that leap in faith in BlackBerry and Android, so to speak, and pick it up. So I do think the carriers are going to be able to, it's a very marketable phone, both in terms of the enterprise space and the consumer space. So I think it's going to have some pretty strong carrier support, personally.
Yeah, I think the carrier support will be good for it, especially when it comes to updates as well, because it's more of a mass appeal device for one. And two, the Android ecosystem tends to go ahead and push out updates a little bit faster than what BlackBerry 10 would. And there's more of an urgency there with Android because of the fact that the customer base is higher at that point in time, even if it's not necessarily for any one specific device. It's just Android in general. They want to go ahead and keep it updated. So I think the carrier support all around will be improved. But that's not to say that it's going to be, insanely fantastic either. Don't expect like Apple like updates, of course, because Android still suffers from their own problems with waiting for carriers. It will just be improved upon what we know now from BlackBerry 10. Like you're not going to have these random rollouts for only one specific carrier or anything like that. It'd be a little bit more improved upon than what exists now for BlackBerry 10.
Very well put. Very well put. What else we have, Alex? You dropped the ball. You gotta be on this, man.
Just a little question here from Nick about he would love to see a review of BBM Apple Watch app. I don't know if anyone has access to an Apple.
Can we get that from Mobile Nations? Can Mobile Nations provide that?
One of them probably could.
All right.
One of the guys on iMore. I believe I'm also going to. Winnipeg for a month, so I'll actually be around Kevin for a while, and Kevin has an Apple Watch.
He has more Apple Watches you know what to do with, man.
Yeah, exactly. So at some point in time, I could go ahead and get together a review for that, most definitely, because of the fact that I will be somewhere where there is an Apple Watch.
We should bring it back too.
Look, an Apple Watch. Come here. Let me install this BBM app. What's your BBID? You don't have a BBID? All right, let's make one. Let's make this happen. Yeah. Really good conversation, guys. I think we should hop off and start talking the goodies on the after show. What do you guys think?
I think so.
Alex just wants to go eat barbecue.
Right? He's like, while we do the after show, he's going to be like here with like this giant rib. I can see it now.
Flintstone bones.
I will say it's kind of interesting that we haven't heard of a launch date yet. And I say this with reservation because BlackBerry does BlackBerry. They launched Classic like the middle of December, so they can do whatever they want. This fall is this fall for them. But give the people who you have supporting these devices a heads up so they can plan. Definitely be respectful of your supporters' time, because that's a huge piece that BlackBerry needs to get right so that this thing can be marketed and really make sure that it's done well. So that's my closing comments, guys. Just BlackBerry, let us know. Don't leave us in the dark.
I actually have one quick question to you guys. Do you think if they provided a trade-in program for previous BlackBerry 10 users, do you think it would have an effect on people picking up the new Priv?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I say this because
Why would they want the devices? Like, trade-up program is like, at least they can resell them, but I think that would be such a difficult thing.
Well,
like, it would hurt them.
No, I don't think so, Alex. I mean, exactly what Brandon's about to say, to keep people there. If you look at migrating your base over and getting them to buy a new device, that's the best way to do it. If you look at the overall sales of BlackBerry 10 devices, the best year they had was the first quarter when they launched Z10 Q10. And why? Because they had a trade-in program for legacy devices to come over. So I think that same thing can work very well here. Even doing a care package where I just pay BlackBerry monthly, I would do that.
Short term, I don't think it would be financially responsible, but long term, it would probably be financially responsible for them. Alex, I get what you're saying. You're basically thinking of it from a financial perspective, an investor relations sort of side, because John Chen wants money. No doubt about it. John Chen just wants to collect some money and show some profit. However, from the user side of the situation, if you want people to go ahead and get this device and you want them to be attracted to the BlackBerry brand and you want them on Android ecosystem in any sort of way, then you should definitely offer an upgrade program to get these people transitioned.
Well, I just mean, like, okay, so obviously Apple does it, but they get, in exchange, they'll get 5Ss, they'll get 5s, and then they can go and resell those and actually make decent money for them. Whereas you have, like, BlackBerry 10, if they start backing off on BlackBerry 10 and a bunch of people hand in their passports or their Z30s, then, like, what are they going to do with them?
I would only offer it up to the Z30. Like, newer devices, the Classic Passport would not be available for that kind of upgrade.
Z10, Q10?
Z10, Q10, Q5, Z3, yeah, all those.
Alex, it's way different for Apple. It's a completely different thing for Apple because for them, It's not so much about getting that hardware so that they can resell. I'm sure they can resell it, but the main thing is keeping people on their ecosystem, and they have so many things that they can charge people for that people will purchase. Like every app that somebody purchases on iTunes is money in the bank for Apple, right? Any song that they purchase through iTunes is money in the bank for Apple, and a whole bunch of other stuff, like extra warranty, all that stuff. So, I mean, it's completely different comparing Apple to BlackBerry in this situation. Although,
Not apples to apples, Brandon.
Apple to BlackBerry.
Yeah.
Drops a mic that he didn't actually have on this podcast. But we'll close with that, guys. Brandon, Blaze, and Alex, always love having you guys on, letting us decompress the week. We will be doing our after show shortly after this, so those of you who are interested in the after show, we will have that uploaded for you tomorrow morning. Otherwise, guys, take care. We'll see you next week.
Have a good one,
Thank you
guys. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in.
Peace. And yeah, Alex, I'm going to try to